Well, welcome to the Burnout Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Nugent. It's an honor to be with you here today. I'm going to talk about something today that affects every single one of us, adversity, and the challenges that each one of us face. Now, first and foremost, let's be honest. Nothing in life ends up working out exactly, and the key word is exactly how we think it's going to be. How many times do we, have a goal and we set out for that goal, and while we might achieve that goal, there are so many twists and turns in different ways and setbacks and failures and everything in between, that come up as a result of actions that we're taking. Even though we're moving towards a goal, even though we're moving forward, it still doesn't necessarily look how we think it's going to look. And so many times we get fixated on an outcome, and when the outcome doesn't look like it, we want it to look like, or the journey to where we're headed looks different, creates angst, creates anxiety, creates frustration, creates doubt. It creates all sorts of different emotions. And that is life. So one of the things that I've really truly learned to lean into and embody is the idea of detaching from outcomes, detaching from what it necessarily needs to look like. There's a lot more peace that's involved in that. I also believe, my personal belief from a spiritual perspective, is that God, the universe, is intricately involved in all the things, way more than we even fully comprehend or fully realize. And I believe that the setbacks, the adversity, the challenge that we're faced with are actually gifts. I believe they're all gifts from God. They're presented to us, sometimes by choices we made, other times by what life has presented to us. But nevertheless, we are giving adversity and we're giving challenges as gifts, and they're opportunities to learn, to grow, to excel, to level up, to become better versions of ourselves. Without adversity, without challenges, without the problems that we're faced with, growth would not be possible. The reality is, if we lived in the land of unicorns and rainbows and everything was perfect and we were in this existential, orgasmic state of mind always, there'd be no growth. In fact, we'd go insane. And one of the key reasons why people turn to addictions and addictive behaviors is because they are faced, or we are faced, with challenges that we don't like, we don't want to accept them, and rather than feel the emotions or move through them, or rather run towards them, we learn to, or really we're programmed to avoid, to not go there, to not want to feel that, to not want to have that conversation, to not want to face that, to not want to face the truth, whatever it happens to be. And it's in that space of avoidance, or the space of not wanting what we're currently experiencing or what's being presented to us, is where real tension kicks in. It's where anxiety kicks in. It's where the frustration, it's where all our feelings are intensified, and feelings, frankly, none of us want to feel. They're extremely uncomfortable. And again, many people turn to addictive substances and behaviors to not feel that. But here's the catch in this whole thing. Here's the irony in that, is my belief is you can never outrun it. Whatever problem we're faced with, if we're turning to not feel something, whatever that happens to be, whatever substance, whatever behavior, all we're doing is kicking the can down the road. And how many times have you or people that you know actually stay in this cycle when unwanted emotions come up, adversity, comes upon us? Let's be clear, it's always going to be there. It's always going to come. We don't want to feel that, and so we get stuck. We temporarily numb. In fact, we turn to something to not feel that unwanted emotion, which provides temporary relief. There's this, sense of a high, if you will, or more than anything, it's just a sense of avoiding the feelings we don't want to feel. And then shortly thereafter, depending upon what it is, it comes right back. And many times it comes back stronger and stronger and stronger. This is why so many people deal with obesity. I know this all too well, having lost over 125 pounds. I mean, food was my drug, eating was the addiction. And I would cope with food. If I was happy, I would eat. If I was anxious, I would eat. If I was sad, it didn't matter what emotion, food was the go-to. And the reality is, to get out of that, whether it's food, alcohol, porn, drugs, drama, social media, it doesn't matter. There's so many different modalities that people turn to not want to feel unwanted emotions. But the idea that I presented at the beginning, just what if all of these unwanted experiences or emotions that we're feeling, the adversity that we're faced with in life, are actually gifts? What if that's God's way of wanting us to be the best versions of ourselves? As a father, There's a part of me that wants to rescue my kids. I don't want to see them in pain. I don't want to see them struggle. Many times over the years, I've come in and just swept in, whether it was writing a check, whether it was saving them from this or saving them from that, avoiding, maybe unnecessary pain because I didn't want them to feel that. The reality is, in many ways, when I would show up that way, I was doing them a disservice. There was a lesson for them to learn in that. And in many ways, I took that away from them. They realized, oh, dad will take care of me, or dad will do this, or dad will do that. And the reality is, one of the greatest things that we can do for our children is let them fail, let them struggle, let them figure it out, let them experience what it feels like to have adversity. I know so many kids, when they become adults, where mom and dad had taken care of everything for them, and then lo and behold, now they're on their own, and they don't know what to do with it. And there's many addictions, and a lot of kids turn, especially in the college season. Granted, it's an age thing, it's society, but a lot of these kids will turn to alcohol and drug abuse, frankly, because they don't want to deal with things because they've always had mom and dad come in to rescue them, and now maybe mom and dad aren't coming in to rescue them. I've also seen experiences in my previous career, owning an investment management firm, working with hundreds and hundreds of families, seeing parents that would still continue to enable and bail out their adult children. I've seen people that have actually, frankly, destituted their own lives just to make sure their kids were okay, and they were hurting themselves, but they couldn't tell their kids no. They couldn't say no, and ultimately ended up hurting them. And I've seen this happen numerous times. So we have this thing around adversity, not only for ourselves, but our loved ones, that we don't want them to feel pain. We don't want them to go struggle. We want to make it, quote unquote, easy. But what if the easy route is actually the hardest route? What if the easy route or the easy approach, frankly, is never going to get us there, or it's going to take twice as long, or 10 times or 100 times longer? For men, for example, that are struggling in their marriages or struggling in their relationships, or they're in a sexless marriage, many men in that time, they're longing connection, they're longing to be touched. And yet, instead of having the conversations or leaning in or making the changes that they need to bring their wife closer to them, they might turn to porn, they might turn to masturbation, they might turn to other ways to, quote unquote, get off, and they get that temporary dopamine hit. But nevertheless, when men lean into that and actually engage in watching porn or masturbating, it's not getting them any closer. In fact, it's taking them further and further away from what they ultimately want. There is nothing better than the real thing. And many times, in order to have that real thing, for example, in this example, intimacy in your marriage, it requires having the hard conversations. It might require radical shifts in your life. It might require doing things that are, quote unquote, hard. But when you start to do them, they start to become easy. And the ultimate connection and intimacy and desire that someone that's living in a loveless marriage wants, that has continually avoided having hard conversations and working through it and frankly owning their shit, isn't going to get what they want. Again, you can't outrun the challenges that we're faced with. So again, this whole idea, what if the challenges we've been faced with are actually gifts from God, are actually these divinely, orchestrated moments, events that frankly feel extremely overwhelming, that we can't handle the stuff, that we don't want this, but nevertheless, what if it's a gift? Just what if? I want you to think about that, about the concept and the idea that every challenge that we're faced with is actually a gift. I'm a men's coach, and I work with men in helping them be the best version of themselves. My company is called Burn Up, and if you see my logo, it's a man standing in flames like a phoenix rising. And it's built upon the principle, and it's built upon the belief that when a part of our life maybe goes away or doesn't look like the way we want to, those are actually learning and growing opportunities. And what we thought was in our best interest, what we planned on, this outcome that we we're so fixated on, really wasn't the best option for us. That God knows better than, God knows what we need more than what we know. And when we can trust and let go and trust that the universe and trust that God is going to have our back no matter what happens, it's much easier to work through things. And I can look back through some pretty traumatic and difficult moments in my life, and I can say with confidence that each one of those very difficult, challenged, painful experiences were actually gifts. They were opportunities for me to grow, what I thought I wanted and what I thought was my best interest, frankly, wasn't. It wasn't in my best interest. And the acceptance of these challenges when you're in it is hard. Trust me, when I'm going through something very difficult and something challenging, just to be able to say, oh, hell yeah, this is awesome, let's go, isn't easy. And so I'm not saying that all of a sudden that every challenge you come into, you're almost giddy about it. I really actually hope one day that, I think it's a superpower that people can lean more and more into the quote unquote hard, because when you're able to lean more into it, you can move through it quicker and it doesn't have the power over you as it would be if you're just resisting it. So much of the suffering and the pain that we experience in life is due to the resistance to what is. And when we can surrender, and this is actually my definition of surrender, is I might not like something, but once I accept that this is just where I'm at, the intensity, the suffering that I'm feeling actually subsides. In some cases, goes away completely. There's a lot of things in life I don't like. There's a lot of people I don't like. But nevertheless, when I don't put energy into all of these things that I view as negative happening, and I accept it, and I start to look at it as a gift, I'm able to move through things really, really quickly. Much quicker than I would otherwise. So much of the pain and suffering that I've experienced in life is because I was not willing to accept my current situation, the circumstances, what was dealt with me, and I fought it, and I fought it, and I fought it, to the point at one point nearly taking my life, being in such a dark space, avoiding very uncomfortable conversations, turning to addictive substances and behaviors to just let the pain go away. It was too much. It was too much. And all I was doing was extending my suffering and extending the pain that I was feeling. They say the truth will set you free. The reality is when we face our challenges, when we face the pain, when we face what we don't like, that's where freedom is. My tagline is freedom's on the fire. The fire, if you will, that the hard, the painful, the stuff we don't like or want to feel, is we lean into it rather than pull away. That's where freedom is. That's the freedom of the fire. And hence my logo with a man, burning up in flames with his arms up, represents that while something might, quote unquote, burn to the ground, if we choose to lean into it and see it as a gift and what we can learn from that and then move from there, we're actually leveling up. That fire, that thing that went away, that relationship, that business, that friendship, that, outcome that we had, we're so fixated on, isn't come to fruition. When we can accept that and let that go, what we can then see are 10 other doors that open that we couldn't see clearly before. And one of those other doors is much more fruitful, there's more pleasure, there's more wealth, there's more of everything that I'm searching for ultimately, when I can, again, learn to trust on a higher power and trust on God and the universe has my back. I believe that, again, regardless of what you believe, that God wants us to have it all. And in order to have it all, we're going to be required to face challenges. And how we face those challenges will ultimately depend and ultimately determine on how quickly we get where we ultimately want to go and to ultimately be who we want to be. It's not easy. So many times we want the easy button. And there are moments in life where it's just nice just to chill and just like coast for a minute. But nevertheless, enjoy that moment. And also remember this is something that really helps me a lot, is everything is temporary. Everything. The most pleasurable, orgasmic moments in your life, it's temporary. The happiest, the most fulfilled you feel in your life, that moment is temporary. And also remember the pain and the hard and the uncomfortable are also temporary. Well, what's interesting is we can prolong those uncomfortable positions, those uncomfortable moments, the adversity that we're facing, if we're not willing to face it. So the more we're willing to face our adversity, the more we're able to lean in to the uncomfortableness, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, the quicker we'll move through it, the faster we'll be able to get where we want to. And in order to do that, we have to be willing to be uncomfortable and lean into it. Again, accept it, surrender to what is. And once you accept it, it loses its power. The mind is powerful. It is so powerful. And one of the key things that I do with the men that I work with is we talk about the story we're telling ourselves. What's the story? Everything, and I mean everything, is rooted in a story. So if you find yourself in any particular situation, it doesn't matter what it is, and it's creating angst, it's creating, uncomfortable feelings or frustration or anger or resentment, hatred, whatever it is, it's rooted in a story. And guess what? You can change that story. It's just a story you're telling yourself. Regardless of the facts, regardless if it's a he said, she said, regardless of what the situation happens to be, you have a choice. Life's dealt you a deck of cards, and it's a game. And you can learn how to play poker, or you can keep folding your hand with frustration. And if you keep doing that, you're going to continue to be presented with that. You're going to continue to get presented with that until you actually learn the lesson. I truly believe that. And so that's why, again, why do you see people that have gone through a divorce, right? And 10 years later are thriving, and you have other people that have been through a divorce and 10 years later are still miserable, can't be in the same room with their ex, still have a story. They shit talk and badmouth them all the time to other people and to their kids. Why is one person able to thrive and another not? And I know people that have had very, very similar situations, very, very similar circumstances, that again, there's this polarity between the two. One is thriving, and the other one is suffering. Why? What's the difference? Why is one thrive and one suffers? My belief is it's rooted in a story. It's rooted that one was able to accept what is, learn the lesson, and then move on. Others, their story of victimhood and being a martyr is such a part of who they are, they can't see through it. Again, it's a story. So my invitation to you is, if you are, anything in your life is creating angst or creating discomfort, go to the root of it. It's rooted in a story, and start telling yourself a different story. Start being open to perspective. Start having curiosity. One of the greatest things that I've found to help me through adversity, especially when I'm in it and I'm in the thick of it, is to express gratitude, not only for the things, that we have in our life, because again, you can always find things that we're grateful for, but more importantly, you're taking it one step further, is expressing gratitude for the actual challenge that we're faced with, for the problem that we're faced with, for the person that's in our life right now that's creating so much angst or so much anger. Express gratitude for them. I promise you that if you actually develop it and add this practice to your life, the intensity of what you're feeling will go down. Might not necessarily go away, but if you continue to practice that and you can get back more to what I call a love space or a place of acceptance, it won't have the power over you. At the end of the day, the only thing that any one of us have any control over is ourselves. Right now we've got, President Trump at the day of this recording, is now our new president. There's opinions on both sides of this. And it's fascinating how much energy we put into so many things that, frankly, we don't have any control over. We don't. There's so much that we don't have control over. And yet we create so much angst and anxiety and fear of the unknown, or fear of what could happen if this person does this or this person does that. TikTok was banned for 12 hours. Everybody had a story around it. All of a sudden it's back, And again, there's going to be pivots. And let's assume TikTok didn't come back and you're a business that is making all of your money on TikTok. And all of a sudden, you could throw your hands up and be like, oh shit, now what am I going to do, because everything's there? Or you can be like, you know what? Again, perspective, there's another opportunity. There's another door that's opened and I just haven't seen it yet. Again, two people can look at it two very different ways and experience the exact same thing and have completely different outcomes. Going back to what's rooted in the story. So the acceptance of adversity, the acceptance to what is, the surrender to that is one of the greatest ways to move through that. Expressing gratitude. Now, there's a philosophy that I just want to hit high level that I've been introduced to, that I've frankly geek out on and has literally changed my life, is understanding and I'm going to be very high level. By no means am I an expert, but just a high level of the philosophy of Kabbalah. Kabbalah has been around for over 5,000 years. It's rooted in early Judaism. And it's this ancient belief that everything in life that happens to us is a gift. A Kabbalist believes that it is fate, that no matter what happens in life, at some point down the road, and they believe you live multiple lives, that we will have it all, whatever all happens to be, that it's predetermined. But the other side of that is at the speed at which we'll get there, or how quickly we'll learn, is where we have free will. We have free will. We can choose. Everything's a choice. How we react is a choice. What decisions we make is a choice that we're making. We are the creators of our life. And this belief, this philosophy teaches that every negative thing that we view as negative is actually positive. It's a gift from God. And when we have reactions to it, when we avoid it, when we try to go somewhere else, we're just prolonging the current situation where we're at. Or we might be presented with a particular, challenge, if you will. And if we don't learn a lesson in that, we'll continue to be presented with that either in this life or in lives to come until we actually learn the lesson. And then we get to, go up to the next level, if you will. This has been a philosophy that I've really tried to embody. I haven't seen or read or found something that has been so in alignment with the way that I see life. And I can tell you by really practicing this, getting really centered when I'm presented with a challenge or something I don't want to fully experience it. And when I express gratitude, when I accept it, when I, many ways say to myself is, what a pleasure. This is awesome. And many times I don't feel that, but I'm telling myself that. And I'm also leaning into this more and more when I have adversity, and I sit with myself and I just keep asking questions. And what's the root of it? What's the root of it? Why am I scared? Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And more often than not, it's tied to a story. More often than not, it's tied to fear. More often than not, it's tied to something outside of me that frankly may or may not happen. I don't know the exact statistic, but I think we all know this, that most of what we worry about never comes to fruition. Yet we spend so much time worrying and concerned about this could happen or that could happen and this could happen, that could happen. And it takes us away from being present. When we think about the past, it creates depressive feelings. When we think about the future, it creates anxiety. But when we're present, that's where peace is found. Peace is found in the moment. Peace is found today. And the truth is, all we have is today. All we have is today. How many times do we, wake up in the morning and go about our day, but yet we're making decisions necessarily like for 3 months from now or 6 months or when this happens or when that happens, I need to do all these things. And we're so focused on the outcome. We're so focused on hitting a particular goal that it doesn't allow us to be present in the moment. I can't tell you how many times over the years where I was so fixated on the future and when I hit this or when I make this much money that I was not present for my children and not present for other people in my life. Because in my head, I might be there physically, but I'm thinking about the meeting in 3 hours, or I'm thinking about I need to do this or I need to do that. It keeps you away when you're constantly looking to the future from being present. And the ultimate way to get where we want to go is to focus and be the most productive and the most diligent with the day that we have. I work with a lot of men and helping them lose weight, specifically with men that have over 40 pounds to lose. And some of the guys that I work with, like myself, have over 100 pounds to lose. And so the idea of losing 100 pounds or how much work it's going to take to get there, however many months or years to get there, it can be daunting. It's overwhelming. Like, it's impossible. Yet when we can break it down into bite-sized bites and okay, what do I need to do today? I just need to get my cardio in. I need to get my workout in. I need to eat healthy just today. I can do anything for a day. And then rinse and repeat, one day at a time. Micro changes lead to macro results. You can't get there. You can't go from not training and, for example, if you're about ready a marathon, to go from no training at all to running a marathon. I know there's people that have done that, right? Ask those people versus the people that train for it. It's a much different experience. And life is a marathon. And if we want to be the best versions of ourselves, if we want to have the best body, we want to, have the best relationships, make as much money as possible, have purpose, have the confidence that we're all looking for, it requires bite-sized, actionable steps on a daily basis. Micro changes lead to macro results. It's discipline. It's being consistent. The secret formula, if you will, to success, frankly, isn't secret. It's to get in shape, the formula is easy. To make money, the formula is easy. To have a healthy relationship, the formula is easy. But yet, we all have stories attached to it that make it harder. It's the emotional stress, or it doesn't look like we think, it should look like, which then creates angst. It's the cycle, this perpetual cycle that we catch ourselves into it. And when we can step back and actually see the cycle playing out of it, with practice, you're more likely to not follow into those same traps, and you'll find yourself moving through stuff much quicker. And many times, things that we thought were quote unquote hard or impossible or I can't do, when we lean into it and we actually end up doing it, we can look back and think like, oh my God, that was easier than I thought, or whoo, I I can do it. I did it. And it gives us confidence that we can accomplish things. We are the creators of our life. Adversity is going to come. Expect it. There's no way to avoid it. If you find yourself in a cycle of avoiding hard conversations, decisions, you're stuck in fear, trust me, you are not going to get out of that running from it. You cannot outrun it. The universe and God is presenting it to you as a gift. So if you can start to look at challenges as gifts, just change your perspective. Again, if you're in the thick of something right now, the last thing you're in all of a sudden, and after this, hearing this podcast, like, oh my God, this is amazing. I feel so good. It doesn't work like that. But if you start to practice that and start to embody that, expressing gratitude, and start to shift and change your story, you will find yourself moving through things so much quicker. And with practice, you'll find yourself that as you continue to face the challenges that you're presented with, because again, they're coming, you'll move through them much quicker. And stuff, as you continue to practice, the stuff that would have just basically, put you into a frozen state, you couldn't even do anything, months, months, or years down the road, you're able to move through it with, with ease because you practice this. Practice expressing gratitude, practice and seeing the challenges that we're faced with our gifts. My belief is, anyone that we view as successful, whether that's a relationship, money, business, whatever, the only difference between them and someone that's not is that they're willing to do things that unsuccessful people aren't. It's about effort. It's about consistency. It's about facing your fears. It's about learning from failures. It's a mindset. This is a mental game. Life is a mental game. Life is an emotional game. And much of that, as I said earlier, is rooted in the story. So my parting question to you is, what's your story? What are you telling yourself? What story are you telling yourself that's not serving you? Trust me, we all do it. And if you take time, some intentional time, some time to meditate, some time to look at that, some time to write it, rewrite that story, write it out on paper, tell yourself a different story. If you start to practice and embody that, you will see that life's challenges aren't as challenging. You'll see that the adversity that you're facing won't be as intense, and you'll be able to move through these things with grace, with much more peace, and much more happiness and joy. And by moving through those things, you're going to have a much more present life. And it will not only affect you, but it will affect everyone around you. And as you continue to embody that and practice that, the joy and the happiness and the existential orgasm moments, there'll be more of them and more as you face your challenges. Again, if you are a man that is struggling to really, you're stuck in your head, you're stuck in addictive patterns, you're just telling yourself stories and you don't know how to get yourself out of it, reach out to me. Shoot me an email, message me on social, text me if you have my number, or reach out and I'll give you my number. Let's talk. I know it. I've gone through a lot of shit, a lot of pain, and I'm learning and have learned how to work with it to my advantage. Again, this is a game. You've been dealt a deck of cards. How are you going to play? The choice is yours. Thank you for joining me today on the podcast. I'll see you next time.